3 years ago, I put out a video asking the question, "Another American Civil War coming?" A link to that video is posted in the description of this video. At that time, I held out some hope and was pretty optimistic that the idea of another American Civil War was more of a wet dream for those who want to either see a great rift and shift in the founding principles of the nation, or were living in worry and fear. I closed out the video reminding viewers that negotiation between rival factions could lead to a peaceful outcome if the words of the late President Ronald Reagan, which I will paraphrase here, were followed. In a successful negotiation, neither side gets everything they want. Both sides walk away with something, and both give up something important to them. That's how a constitutional republic is supposed to work. That was in September 2022. Now it is August 2025. Has my opinion changed, and if so, in what way and why? Political polarization hasn't exactly cooled off. But at the same time, we haven't seen organized state secession movements reach critical mass. Violence and unrest are still episodic, but still not systemic civil war. On the global front, new flashpoints have ignited. Russia and Ukraine have evolved in ways no one predicted in 2022. The Taiwan-China tensions have escalated, though being downplayed by the American legacy media. And Middle East events, especially since all that has taken place since the Hamas attacks against Israel in October 2023 and the war between Israel and Iran, the rise of waterway violence against commercial shipping by the Houthis in Yemen, which has increased American involvement in the region, including the B-2 bombings of Iran's nuclear facilities, tie into my original warnings back in 2022. 3 years ago, my biggest tech concern was Twitter's censorship of conservative voices on that platform. At that time, no one factored in generative AI and deepfake-driven propaganda as accelerants. That could be a new spark scenario worth adding to my current analyses. So then, more where I got it wrong and where I got it right, and what I see now. In September 2022, emotions were running high, the midterms were around the corner, and mainstream and alternative media were buzzing about the idea that we were on the edge of the abyss. Back then, I said an actual shooting war with states seceding was highly unlikely. Looking at 2025, I still stand by that. Despite the continued polarization, we haven't seen states lining up to leave the Union or organized armies forming along red and blue state borders. That part I got right. I also said we were seeing the seeds of violence in cities like Portland, Kenosha, and of course January 6th, and that those movements were still seething under the surface. Here I was sadly right as well. Political violence has escalated, and in 2024 and 2025 we've seen more assassination attempts, more armed standoffs, and more extremist chatter than I ever hoped to witness. Not a civil war, but enough to show the cracks are widening. I warned that a U.S. civil war would create global shockwaves, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea taking advantage, NATO collapsing, Pakistan and India ready to ignite. On this point, I wasn't wrong, but I may have underestimated something else, the role of President Donald Trump getting re-elected in a landslide election, nor two failed assassination attempts on his life, one which almost succeeded, and the fast pace and growth of AI technology. Back in 2022, we weren't yet dealing with deepfakes and AI-driven propaganda at the level we are today. In 2025, I see how information warfare alone could ignite a domestic conflict without a single shot fired simply by turning Americans against each other. Where I may have been too optimistic is in assuming that rational minds in media would eventually calm the rhetoric. 3 years later, the media landscape is more fractured than ever. We're not just living in different echo chambers, we're living in different realities. That makes my old advice of turn the hell off, have a beer, and get to know your neighbors even more relevant now than it was then. And here's something I flat out got wrong. I said the idea of civil war was the wet dream of the insane and anarchists. That was me being blunt, but in hindsight, I oversimplified. Some people who fear civil war aren't crazy. They're scared because they see the same fractures we all see. The danger now isn't just the extremists cheering for war, it's the average American losing faith that we can hold this republic experiment together. We currently see within the Democrat Party a serious drift into not only Bernie Sanders-style socialism, but outright communism, with the primary win for New York mayoral candidate and self-proclaimed communist Zoran Mamdani. So where do I stand in 2025? I still don't see an organized civil war on the horizon, but I do see a nation on a knife's edge, where political violence and cultural collapse could create a slow-burn civil conflict without ever calling it war. And I see the global consequences of that still being just as catastrophic as I imagined in 2022. If there's one thing I'd tell my past self, it's this: keep warning, but keep listening too. Fear is dangerous, but so is ignoring the warning signs. Thanks for watching or reading this message. Watch on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals, or read it on Substack or Blogger. This is Shmuel ben Shlomi, wishing you shalom.